you struggle and you work hard and it's tough and you don't have to love your job and you're not expected to love it. But it's like, I think things are different today. And I think you can love your life and you can love your job and your line of work and be of service to people, where it's that law of circulation, the giving and receiving, where like it's a win-win-win. So it's a win for you, it's a win for the client, and it's a win for everybody else around us. And I think it's possible. For some people, they find this later in life, and that's okay. But I think it's absolutely possible for everybody.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
I am so excited to have as my guest today, Dr. Kristi Tompkins. Dr. Kristi is a functional medicine doctor who specializes in women's health with a focus on supporting women during the sacred transitional years of perimenopause and menopause. Integrating the principles of functional medicine, transformational coaching, and mind-body medicine, Kristi provides her clients with a full evaluation, functional labs, and personalized protocols. As a business coach, Kristi teaches women about the intimate connection between health, well-being, and business, the essential nature of aligning personal and business values, and the profound energetics of money as it impacts business success and prosperity. Kristi is a member of Dr. Joe Dispenza's Inner Health Coalition and hosts the Fire, Soul, and Grace podcast. So welcome, Kristi, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I'm going to start, as I always do, with the same question. Kristi, what was money like in your family growing up?
Oh, that's a sensitive question right off the bat. So, wow, what's interesting about money was something that was difficult to obtain. It was a bit of a struggle for my family. Not early on. Early on, it was very, very prosperous and it was very abundant when my parents were married. So with a divorce, as what often happens with a family where there's a divorce, the money situation or the money security or the sense of security changed. And so traditionally, even back then, but probably even traditionally today, a lot of children would stay with their mothers, and I was the opposite. So my brother and I, we actually stayed with our father. So I was raised by a single father, would visit my mom weekends, every other weekend, but this was way before internet, way before Facebook and FaceTime and texting. And so it literally was like the landline where we would, my mom would call and say, hey, do you want to come over this weekend? So I was raised by a single father. I learned about the ethics of hard work and working a job or sometimes working two jobs. And so I was fortunate enough to see my father work a lot of hours. He also did coaching part-time, kind of as a side thing, football coaching and baseball coaching for my brother's teams, which was kind of cool. But he was busy and he was always working and always stressed about money. And so fortunately or unfortunately, I got to see different sides of that. And there were times where it was abundant and there were times where it was scarce. So it was not a consistency, unfortunately. So it was consistently inconsistent. And so with that, growing up, I was able to see the profound impact of hard work. But my dad was somebody that was always struggling. He was struggling with his own emotional health because of the divorce and his own childhood issues that he had. But he was also really struggling to make sure that he had enough money for my brother and I. And what's really interesting about that, now that you're kind of asking me this question, it's taking me back many, many years ago, is that my dad was very generous. So what I see in a lot of people today and throughout my life is that when you don't have enough, you tend to hoard. You tend to feel that sense of scarcity and you want to hold on to as much as you can. My dad didn't have a lot at times, but he was very generous with his money, even to this day. Like my dad still donates to church and he does the tithing and he volunteers his time. My dad's a very generous man. So even though he hasn't had a lot in his life, now he's doing fine. But back then, he was always like, he would take a second job to provide, Christmas presents for my brother and I, and for other people as well. And so he had that generous spirit and generous heart. But unfortunately, I got to see the other side of him where it kind of got the best of him, and it allowed him to feel stressed, and he would turn to, food or alcohol or whatever as a way to cope with that financial stress, and obviously other issues too. So over the years, as I've gotten into different levels of coaching, aside from my academic background, different mastermind groups, I've learned a lot about the psychology of money and the energetics of money, and how deeply, deeply rooted that is in our being, not just from our memory, but actually it's stored in our body. And there's a lot of things that have come up for me over the last few years that have come up to the surface, or things that I realize I'm doing based on my old programming and my old conditioning, or current conditioning, I should say, that are coming up because of that childhood environment with my dad. My mom, on the other hand, when I would visit her, she was the opposite. She was very secure, very consistent, very predictable. She did later on get remarried. My father did as well back then. But my mom was somebody that was a lot better with money. And so when I went to go live with her when I was 15 as a teenager, fast forward 8 years later, I got to live in a home where money was very abundant and very consistent and very secure and very responsibly managed. So I got to see two completely different sides of money, but also I got to feel that sense of security too. So it was a very interesting childhood, to say the least.
Thank you so much, Kristi, for sharing that so honestly. I have spoken to other guests who grew up in homes with single parents. You're the first one I'm speaking to that grew up with a single father rather than a single mother, that, your story is swapped. And I'm hearing, of course, as you said, the consistency of inconsistency. And I'm also hearing a beautiful message that your father passed along to you, which is of generosity. And I'm always curious what the role of education played in a family, and whether that was stressed, because I know you to be someone who is quite educated.
So what's interesting about that is, yes, my parents were supportive of me in school, and obviously always wanted me to do well in school when I was younger. But college wasn't necessarily heavily emphasized or pushed on me like it is with a lot of families, especially today. And nobody in my family had actually gone to college. And I knew at a very, I think, obviously high school, I knew that I wanted to go to college. It was never a question of, should I go? Should I not go? It was always a definite. And I think that really comes from this deep core within me, that maybe it's related to my parents, maybe subconsciously it's related to seeing them struggle or seeing them marry into different families that had more financial security. But there was always this inner drive, this inner fire within me that knew I wanted to go to school. And I did. I got my undergrad. I ended up studying dietetics, nutrition, or nutritional science. My original degree, though, was psychology, which is really interesting because to this day, I'm so interested in the human mind and the human brain and human behavior and our thoughts and our emotions. So that's always been this common thread with me. So it's kind of come full circle. But at that point, and I still love food. I still love to talk about the nutritional aspect, the nourishment to the body, the nourishment to the soul. So I did go to college, got my undergrad, and I was planning on actually continuing on to get a master's degree, either in nutrition, like a master's in nutritional science, or public health, something along the line. But I also knew that I wanted a break, right? I was in my 20s and I wanted to go get a job and work and have money. And I had moved back to the San Francisco Bay Area where I'd grown up. I grew up in San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley. And so I went back to that part of California, and this was in the 1990s, and I was easy to get a job back then. This is before 2001 and obviously well before 2008. And I worked for a few years, and I worked for a lot of Silicon Valley big companies like Intel and some others. And I did that for a number of years. It was great, but my heart wasn't in it. I wasn't lit up by my job. It was a job, and it was money, and it was a paycheck. But I knew I wanted to get back to something a bit more meaningful. Well, fast forward, I was on this personal journey of reading about other ways of healing the body, other ways of, besides just through food, besides obviously just through exercise. And so I was on this personal path of learning about nowadays plant medicine has different terms. I'm talking about like botanical medicine and herbs and things that are therapeutic and healing for the body. So, and also other ways of healing the body as well. So I discovered naturopathic medicine as a professional degree or professional education and moved up to the Pacific Northwest in Washington State and decided to pursue that medical degree, which is still a science-based, research-based medical program or academic program. And we still learn anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, immunology, all the sciences, and then all the clinical sciences like cardiology, endocrinology, gastroenterology. But the treatment approach is different. Our evaluation perspective is different. So we're looking at the whole body as obviously individual parts, but it's this integrated system of organs, integrated system of cells, integrated systems of all the different organ systems and how that will impact one another, but really getting to the underlying cause of why you're having pain, why you're having stomach issues, why your metabolism has slowed down, why your hormones are off in a way, and why you might be tired or not sleeping. So looking at each symptom individually, but how that relates to other symptoms collectively, and trying to get to the root cause of why you're having these health conditions or symptoms. And so I finished that program. I worked at a really wonderful integrative clinic just outside Seattle that had MDs and naturopathic doctors. Now you would probably call that a functional medicine clinic. Functional medicine is a relatively new-ish term. It actually did originate up in the Northwest. But functional medicine and naturopathic medicine are very, very close. They're almost synonymous. And so with a naturopathic medical degree, I did go on to get further training with the IFM, the Institute of Functional Medicine. But again, it's very similar to what I studied in school. It's just more of a concise, condensed version, the IFM is. So I feel like I just had this conversation with somebody recently. I'm not so much a black sheep in my family, but I was somebody that was very ambitious. And I think that really just comes from like just who I am at my core, maybe a soul level. Like I love learning and I love constantly achieving new things. And to this day, I mean, I'm done with academic programs per se, done with school, but I love taking classes and I love doing continuing ed and I love learning a lot more about how the body works, but not so much on the physical level, but the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and integrating that into the clients and the people that I work with today.
Thank you. I mean, I'm hearing that you are a lifelong learner and couldn't sense the enthusiasm as you speak about it and how to this day you're continuing to learn more, and maybe it's shifted away from the physical and more to how your mind affects the physical. I'm curious, before we go on, Kristi, did your parents, though you were a self-starter and you were the first person in your family to go to college, did they help pay for it, or were you on your own in terms of financing it?
So for my undergrad, they did pay for part of it. Well, they paid for a portion of it. And then, which I look back now, and it wasn't a lot of money. This was a state university in California. And again, this was the mid 1990s. So definitely not expensive compared to what education costs today.
Crazy what it is today.
It was so I mean, gosh, it was so inexpensive. So I did that. And then I did have a student loan balance, but it wasn't a lot. But kind of going back to my 20s, I mean, I was somebody that got really, like a lot of people in their 20s, especially college, I got really wrapped up in a lot of credit card debt. And it was like, ooh, I have all this free money. And oh yeah, I definitely was like, ooh, cool, I get to go shopping and I'll just pay this off, or I'll pay it over a few months. Yeah, I got caught up in that whirlwind of having access to borrowed money. So they did pay for part of it, but then ultimately later on, my mom did end up paying off my student loan. Again, it wasn't a lot, but it was a few thousand left. And because they had done that so my mom married my stepfather, who has since passed away many, many years ago. He passed away from Alzheimer's. But when they were married, they were doing really well until obviously the demise of Alzheimer's obviously took his life. He passed away. And at some point along the way, because they had paid off my stepbrother's student loan debt, she decided, she's like, I'm going to pay yours off as well. So she did end up helping me later on, which was wonderful. And I was very, very grateful for that. Fast forward 5.5 years later, after I graduated, I did go back to school. And this was a very expensive degree. It's a medical program. And I did take out medical loans for that. So no, they did not help. I think at times they would help with living expenses. You call your parents and you're like, I need help. So they did help out from time to time. But for the most part, I worked a lot of part-time jobs when I was in medical school. I did a lot. It wasn't necessarily enough to cover the academic cost of going to school, but at least it allowed me enough money for like groceries and gas money and just like your basic necessities. And so I worked as a personal chef. That was my very first business. I worked as a personal chef part-time. I worked as a pet sitter, a dog house sitter. I helped seniors that needed care with cooking and running errands and cleaning and taking them to doctor's appointments. And I did that quite a bit. But yeah, no, it was definitely on my own, but it was something that I wanted to do. It was my choice, and it was something that was deep within me. It was a calling, and I really wanted to follow that calling.
Yeah. So, and I do love that you mentioned that the credit card debt was in the past. So I'm assuming that you had a brief period of time where you didn't quite understand compound interest and how it can work against you, and that didn't recur.
Well, I wouldn't say that it was a brief. I did ultimately end up paying that off before I went back to school. But again, when you're in school, so it was something that kept coming up, and then I would resolve it. And yes, I literally, or the financial literacy side, I do understand how that works. But I think when you're in a position where you're doing the best you can, you're going to school and you're trying to pass your classes, but you're also working. And so it did come back at some point, but then I was able to pay that off. So I'll go through spells in my life or periods, timelines in my life where I will have that and realizing, okay, this is getting out of hand. This is too much. And obviously knowing the impact of that, the financial impact and the added money that's added on to that. So paying that off over time, I was able to do that each time. So yeah, it's one of those painful lessons that sometimes it keeps coming back, like the hardest lesson to learn. But yeah, ultimately I was able to pay that off.
Great. So Kristi, please now share with our listeners both what you were doing, or I understand you to really have two services that you provide. So what you're doing today and how you help women like our listeners.
Yeah, so I've been practicing as a naturopathic doctor, functional medicine practitioner for over 15 years, nearly 17 years. And I started out at this clinic up in the Northwest, seeing everybody, men, women, children, teens, all different types of conditions, and did that for a number of years. Learned a lot about bioidentical hormone testing and prescribing, and definitely a lot of the perimenopause, menopause from right out of the gate, so to speak, working at this clinic. Also men's health. Men do go through hormonal decline, not quite as drastic or as a dip as women go through. So seeing a lot of different cases. And then I moved to California in 2013 and I started my own. And which was, sometimes when you don't know what to expect and you're expecting the best, and then when the worst comes, I shouldn't say the worst, but moving from a very progressive Seattle, Washington, greater Seattle, Washington environment and culture and demographics to a very small conservative rural town in California between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe, it was a different demographics. It was a different culture. It's a different mindset. Everything about the environment, weather was different, people. And so I started out doing a lot of free talks, a lot of like local, like really grassroots, a lot of free talks on health and thyroid and hormones and weight loss and gut symptoms. And I worked within a compounding pharmacy. I worked in one of their back offices, and it was a very small town. So it was a very interesting time for me because it was really about kind of standing on my own, and really that self-leadership came into play of starting that practice. And that continued to grow over time. And then I moved locations a few times. And now fast forward, then I moved to a really nice area of California, which seemed to be a better fit. And when I say nice area, just demographically and economically seemed to be a better fit for the services I was providing and the services I do provide. And then the pandemic, of course, everybody went home. I set up a home office, and I was already kind of hybrid anyways. I was like part-time at home, part-time in the office, and then everybody completely went home. And I learned a lot about obviously integrated software programs and just moving everything completely to a virtual practice. So I did that for a number of years, and actually for a good solid 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. And in that time is when I started investing into business coaching and business mastermind groups and scaling your business and scaling your practice, and not just doing one-on-one fee for service, but actually creating a program that's going to be a win-win-win for the client, for the doctor, for the people that we all interact with. And so from a client perspective, it's a program that helps women really get healthier on all levels, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So looking at the whole person, the whole woman, and helping her with not just her hormone symptoms, but everything. And so it's this program that's really about guidance and a lot of interaction and a lot of engagement and a lot of support. And I started this in 2021. And it actually changed my perception or my love for my work again, because then it meant that I was working with people I really wanted to work with. And so I think that's really important at working with the clients you want to work with, because they're all in and you're all in, and it's more of a collaborative, kind of like dating or any kind of partnership. Like, you want it to be a really good fit versus just randomly helping whoever gets on your schedule. And so then in 2022, I moved to the Colorado area and completely moved my practice virtual. So I've been here now for over 2 years, and it's also a different culture. So I definitely have this wanderlust, a spirit within me that I like. I'll stay in a place for a certain period of time, a certain number of years, and then I like to kind of uproot myself and go to something else that kind of fits who I'm evolving into. Which is funny because I never thought I would be like that when I was a child. But with what I'm doing today, to kind of going back to your question, is I still work with female clients. I still help them with their entire health, with that emphasis on perimenopause and menopause. But now I'm helping women with the business side of, if they're entrepreneurs, they work for a company, they're CEO, independent contractor, they're wanting to change careers. Because what I've noticed over the years is that because of working with so many perimenopause and menopausal women, it's a big time for transition. It's a big time for hormonal transition. Your body's changing, your hormones are dropping. That's affecting not just your physical health, but that's affecting your mental health, your emotional health. A lot of times there's a lot of changes that happen with women. Relationships change. Sometimes they end, they get stronger. Your kids are often leaving the house, going away to college. You're moving, especially we know a lot of people have moved over the last few years. There's your parents are getting older, whether you're caring for them, or you're having other people care for them as they age and pass on. There's a lot of life changes that happen. And so for a lot of women, kind of going back to having that youth on your side, when you have all those abundance of the surplus of hormones, your body can adapt to the changes a lot easier. And not to say that it's a breeze when you're stressed when you're younger, but it's easier because you have that surplus of hormones and adrenal hormones and reproductive hormones. For a lot of perimenopause and menopausal women, you don't have as much. And so that adaptability and that resilience tends to go down a bit. So it makes change and adaptation a bit more difficult. And so what I love is that this often ends up being not just a hormonal change for women, and there's ways to work with women about that, with getting their body and their physical health in top order or optimal health, but also supporting them as they do change careers and as they do start a business. And I know a lot of my friends and a lot of my colleagues are changing their careers and they're shifting and they're wanting to get into something either more meaningful or more lucrative or more prosperous or something that is going to fill them up in a way that makes them authentically happy, and they really get to kind of shine through and show that authentic side of them, but they also get to receive the money that they want as well. And that's not everybody's goal, but that is definitely a desire for a lot of people. And I love integrating the money piece and the energy of financial health with the physical health, because as we all know, you can be very healthy physically and even have really good relationships. But if you're struggling with your finances, that's going to take a toll on the body. And we all know that you can be financially abundant and lucrative and wealthy, but if you're not taking care of the physical health, you're not leaving yourself much time or much energy to enjoy the fruits of your labor if your physical health is declining. So I think it's definitely this very powerfully, intimately, very strong relationship between them. And I love integrating all of that so that women know how to be healthy on every level, physically, but also financially, so that, their business can soar and they can have healthier relationships and a better future.
You mentioned so many different things just now in what you said. So you mentioned, right, health transitions that we go through between perimenopause and menopause. You mentioned life transitions that we go through between perhaps looking to start a business, changing careers, relationships changing. You mentioned financial aspects and money and how that's tied in. And when you first started to speak, when you said you started a group programs that you got to really work with the people you want to work with. So could you define, because some people might hear and say, well, I have physical issues, but I'm not as concerned about money, or is there a particular kind of population that you're drawn to working with?
That's a great question. So I love working. So most of my clients are female. I have obviously treated a lot of men in my practice, not as much in recent years, but I love to work with women who they understand functional medicine, or at least they want to understand it. They embrace it, they welcome it. They know that that's going to be the thing that's going to shift their health, not just their physical health, but all levels of their health and well-being. So women that really want to pursue that, and they are willing to invest in that. And I have clients that have a lot of money, and I have clients that don't have a lot of money. And it really comes down to what you value. And I love the saying, we pay for what we value. And so if you value something, whether it's education or it's home or a reliable car or whatever you happen to value in your life, you're gonna find a way to pay for that. You're gonna find a way to invest in that program or invest in that better health. And so I love working with women who are willing to do what it takes, if they have to invest in their health. And I love women that are open to new ideas. They're the term coachable. They're open to hearing different perspectives on ways that they can better their health. That doesn't mean they're perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has a perfect diet, or they're always working out, or they're always doing yoga and meditating every morning. That's not what this is about. No one has that. That's impossible. And so it's really about that woman that wants to be better, and she's striving to be better physically and emotionally. And maybe this is the piece where this is the time where I come in to help kind of show them the powerful relationship between money and your health. But somebody that understands that investing in yourself or investing in a program is important, but also charging what you're worth. And that's kind of going back to when I started investing into business coaching several years ago. Actually, it was 2019. It was a year before the pandemic. I started investing in business coaching with naturopathic doctors who no longer see clients, but now they're coaching other doctors about the power of money and having enough and having abundance and charging, not being reckless about it or gouging people necessarily, but there are people that are willing to invest in their health, invest in programs, invest in the more of a long-term preventative aspect of their health, not just here, I need my hormones rebuild, or I need this prescription for this quick medical condition, because we know the human body doesn't typically change in a day. You didn't get to this point in a day. And so I like working with women that maybe they have their own business, maybe they're entrepreneurs and they've let their health go, or maybe they have this new business that they're so excited about, but they're struggling financially, or they're not charging what they really want. They're not charging what they're worthy of receiving because of, several different layers there with imposter syndrome and worthiness and maybe childhood issues or things from the past. What a lot of us sometimes get caught up in is what other people are charging. If we know that, like, I don't want to charge more than what my competition is, or I'm not sure how other people are going to perceive me if I charge this much money, whether it's clients or colleagues or friends or family members. That's a big issue as well. So I love entrepreneurs. I just think not everybody is designed to be an entrepreneur. It's a tough road sometimes. It can be wonderful and beautiful and so fulfilling, but it can be lonely and it can be tough, and it can cause a lot of emotional pain, financial stress as well. And it really is that career choice or that career path that really tests your resiliency and your grit and your determination on every level. And I love working with women who have that fire. They have that determination, that relentless tenacity like I do. And so I love working with women who want to be healthier on every level. And also women that are like, gosh, I don't love my job anymore. I don't love my business. I don't love my job. I'm just doing it because it's secure, or I'm doing this because I have a mortgage, or maybe I'm the breadwinner of the family. I completely understand and empathize with all of that. But there's a lot of people that just are not in love with their business anymore, or they're not in love with their line of work that they started so many years ago. And when you think about it, like, most people today don't stay in the same careers like our parents did. They would stay in the same industry or sometimes even the same job for decades. And I think that's obviously less and less common today, if at all. And so I think working with people and giving them that quote permission, like, you get to change your mind, you get to change careers, you get to change relationships if that's part of your path, you get to change locations, you get to change who you are, and that's okay. Especially if you're going into something a lot more aligned with your soul purpose and you're getting the money that you want. And so I love guiding women or being that teacher, mentor, or, beacon, so to speak, that can help them get to that place where they're happier and they're making more money, and their body's healthier as well.
Can you share with us, you are a member of Dr. Joe Dispenza's Inner Health Coalition. Can you describe what that is? Because I'm sure a number of our listeners have heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, so I know coalition sounds like this little speakeasy bar. It's very secretive. It's kind of funny. So the Inner Health Coalition was developed about a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago. And I discovered Dr. Joe's work many, many years ago. I had his books, actual books, and then I had audiobooks. And he was recommended to me years ago when I was going through a really difficult time in my life. I had gone through a relationship, left a relationship that was a roller coaster, emotionally toxic relationship. And I left that, and I was in a pretty low place in my life. And I was still trying to keep my business going. And this is well before 2020. And this is well before I started doing these programs. And I was struggling with my emotional health, but I was still exercising. I was still, taking care of my physical health, but I was struggling from a psychological perspective. And I, went to counseling, and I did all the things and started meeting new people and moved a couple times. And so I found Dr. Joe's work, and it was great, but it wasn't life-changing. It wasn't the right, quote, time for me. Like, it was great, but it wasn't really the thing that moved the needle forward. And so fast forward, it's now 2021, and I'm doing all this coaching. And one of my peers, she's a naturopathic doctor up in Seattle, she was sharing with our group on a Zoom call. She said, I feel amazing. I feel incredible. I feel this sense of renewal. I just got back from this meditation retreat. I went to go see Dr. Joe Dispenza in Orlando, Florida. And this was like May of 2021. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. He does these week-long retreats. And so I had heard about that. I knew about it, but it was a year into the pandemic. And back then, this was a year after there weren't a lot of conferences happening in person still. It was a year in. And so I was like, is this in person or is this online? She's like, no, it's in person. He started doing that earlier this year. I was like, oh, okay, what a rebel. I she said, well, he's coming to Denver, Colorado in July. And I had Colorado on my radar. So I was kind of like, oh, maybe I'll move to Colorado. I don't know anybody there. So all these things serendipitously started to come, or synchronistically started to come together in a way. And I was like, oh, cool. I think I'm going to go to this week-long retreat because I love the work he does and I love his teachings, and his books are a little weird, but I really want to learn more. And so, not weird, just they were just like beyond where I was at that point in my life. And so I go to the week-long retreat. I fall in love with the teaching, the lecture, the people that go. I mean, you get people from all over the world that go to these retreats for different reasons, whether it's health reasons, relationship, financial reasons. People go there because they want to change their life. And then I also fell in love with Colorado. So fast forward, I'm now coming back from multiple retreats. I kept coming back to Colorado and to visit and to go to another retreat. And that's when I moved here in 2022. And each time I would go to an event, I think I've been to 8 different events now. Some of them are week long. Some of them are just the 3.5 days. They call them an advanced follow-up retreat. So I've been to 8 of them so far. And each time it gets a little bit deeper. You learn more of the information. You get to practice what you're hearing, what you're meditating on. So it's not just full meditation for an entire 7 days. Like there's fun, there's dancing, there's breaks, there's lunch and breakfast breaks, and you get to connect with people. And it's just really, really very immersive. What I started noticing is that there's a lot of people in the healthcare profession, whether you're a psychotherapist, you're a chiropractor, naturopathic doctor, MD, a research scientist, there's a million different categories here with related to health, but these people that are, quote, practicing mainstream medicine, conventional allopathic medicine in whatever sense, or even functional medicine, a lot of these providers or people that are in the service of helping people are going to these events. And so we got together, I think a few of us had gotten together and said, we want to develop an organization or some sort of coalition that would allow us to get together every month, a few times a month. And so that desire and that interest kept coming up. So that was developed in the spring, kind of the winter spring of 2023. So it's been about a year and a half. So that was created. And I was part of the first pilot program back in May of 2023. It's about a 4-month program where we meet multiple times per month. We talk about the science behind what Dr. Joe does, the science of meditation, the science of behavior change, changing your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors. We host online Zoom meditations that are guided by not live, but guided by his recorded meditations. We talk about different case histories and testimonials of people that have gone to these retreats or practiced Dr. Joe's work, and they have changed their health in some way through changing their energy, changing the energy of how they think, how they feel, how they act, changing everything. I mean, we are all pure energy. So they're changing energetically on a deeper level. And when you take that body out of stress, take that body out of chronic stress, or take that body out of this, chronic fight or flight survival mode, the body has a chance to heal and the body has a chance to repair. We also learn about Heart Math, which is an organization based out of California, which talks about the energy of the heart, the magnetic energy of the heart and the electrical energy of the brain, and really kind of tuning into the heart as a way to heal your body, but also as a way to better interact with other people as well. Because if you've heard the saying, like your aura or the energy of that person, or they're giving off an energetic vibe that just feels off, or it feels loving and warm and welcoming, and you don't necessarily know why, or you walk into a room and you can feel the tension. I mean, we all have this energy that surrounds us. And so the heart math is really focused on healing the body, but also teaching other people to do it centered around not so much the physical heart, in our body, but also the energetic heart as well. And then it's just really kind of amazing because we get to meet people from all over the world, in Europe, in Canada, here in the United States. There's a few people from South America, where we get to meet people from all over the world that are really wanting to bring this work to our clients. We're wanting to share this in a way, if we can, as much as we can, as much as they're able to listen, as much as they're open to being, quote, coachable. And so that's really what this is about. It's bringing this work on a deeper level to our clients so that they can, heal and create the life that they want. But it also allows us to connect with other providers, service providers that really believe in this. So it's not just we're having to do this alone in the privacy of our own home. So it allows us to feel connected as well.
It sounds great. As we're getting close to the end of our conversation, Kristi, I always like to ask, how has your definition of success shifted from the time, I guess, close to 20 years ago that you first started in this work? And if it's shifted at all, how has your definition of financial success shifted over this period of time?
Yeah, that's another great question. I kind of going back to what I said a few moments ago about change and evolution, and knowing that change is normal. In fact, it's kind of expected. It's a natural part of our world, our universe, and we are expected to change and evolve on every level, not just, academically, financially, physically, but also just energetically, spiritually. And we're here for a reason. And if you're here for a reason and you're following your heart, or you're following your soul purpose, and you found that early on, that's amazing. A lot of us do change because of life circumstances. Life is always happening for you, not to you. So as these life circumstances happen, whether quote good or quote bad, I think a lot of times that can be the catalyst that can shift you in a different direction. When I mentioned a few moments ago about going through a really difficult time, kind of around 2017, 2018, it was a time where I really went inward to heal. And what I realized is that I didn't necessarily want to keep just doing, and I shouldn't say just doing, functional medicine or naturopathic medicine, because it's a beautiful work and I chose it for a reason. And it was part of my calling and my path back when I was 28 or 29, when I decided to go back to school. But as I've evolved and as I've changed and I've learned about other ways of healing the body, going through meditation retreats, practicing meditation, going through different levels of emotional and mental healing, I've changed. And going through the coaching programs that I've gone through, it has positively influenced my life. And so my definition of success today is doing what you love and not staying, quote, stuck or rooted in something because you started it so many years ago. And it's like, there's this analogy, this story I've heard where this person gets on an airplane and maybe they paid first class or whatever class for their seat and the plane's going down. So It's like sometimes you need to just jump off. So you don't have to necessarily stay rooted in the plane because you paid for your ticket. Like you're meant to like fly and like kind of do something else and do something different. So I have learned that listen to the calling of your heart and your soul. And if it's calling you in a different direction, whether it's a career or a relationship or a location, I mean, you've got to listen to that. And it's that deep inner quiet intuition or that intuitive voice that is telling you go in this direction. And so success for me is doing what you love and getting paid what you want, getting paid what you desire so that you can have the kind of life that you want. And if it means you're going back to school, or if it means you're taking a bunch of programs, or if it means you need to, quote, sacrifice or make changes in your life so that you can get to that level, I think that's your call to make. And I think if we need to do what we need to do to create that new life. And it's really just about embracing change and being adaptable and knowing that you're meant to be happy. I mean, life isn't always supposed to be struggle. And I think that was one of the painful lessons I learned growing up, is that I saw struggle. Like, that was just normal. Like, you struggle and you work hard and it's tough and you don't have to love your job and you're not expected to love it. But it's like, I think things are different today. And I think you can love your life and you can love your job and your line of work and be of service to people, where it's that law of circulation, the giving and receiving, where like it's a win-win-win. So it's a win for you, it's a win for the client, and it's a win for everybody else around us. And I think it's possible. For some people, they find this later in life, and that's okay. But I think it's absolutely possible for everybody.
Thank you. And so then, just to make sure I'm understanding, for you, your definition of success is ultimately resilience and being responsive to change and listening to your own inner voice and heart. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Yeah, somewhat. But it's also embracing change and knowing it's a part of life and stepping into that different version of yourself to do what you love. And if money is important to you, and I know it's essential for most of us, if not all of us, if doing what you love and you're getting that, you're financially receiving what you want so that you can have the life that you want, and that's going to be different for each person, then that truly is a win-win-win. And it's right, because it's helping you, it's helping your clients, you're of service, but it has that ripple energetic effect with everybody else around us. And that's the impact I want to share with so many people, is like, you can have that, you can have what you want, you can do what you love and have the financial prosperity that you desire as well.
So, Kristi, if people are listening to this and it resonates, how can they best get in touch with you?
They can get in touch. Best place is probably my website, which is drkristi.com, spelled out DoctorKristi.com. You can also find me on Instagram, which is Dr. Kristi Tompkins on Instagram. I'm sure you'll have this in the episode show notes.
Yes, it'll be in the show notes.
And then I'm also starting to spend a little bit more time on YouTube. That's kind of my latest love interest. Is I'm starting to I've always posted videos for many, many years, but I'm starting to post a little bit more long form videos on YouTube. And I have I don't know when this episode is going to be released, but I am launching a new women's health group program that is going to start in January. It's going to be 4 months. We meet twice a month, every other week. It's going to start in January, and it's all about the energetics and prosperity of women in business. And that's going to start in January, and I have a masterclass coming up here in the next few weeks to share a little bit more about that program. But yeah, I'm so excited. I'm just excited for all these new endeavors and these new changes coming to my life, and how I can share that with other women.
Thank you. I can sense the excitement, and thank you so much for being my guest, Kristi.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.